Number 2 cope is I only have to follow XYZ. This is a amazingly prevalent myth in the Roman Catholic world. Where did you get the idea that you, quote, only have to follow the, quote, ex cathedra statements? Number one, there's not actually a list of the ex cathedra statements. And that's why every Roman Catholic comes up with a different list of what the ex cathedra necessary beliefs are. Furthermore, Vatican I is emphatic and states more than once that you also have to believe beyond the ex cathedra, you also have to believe the universal ordinary teaching, and you have to submit to the ordinary teaching, which can be fallible, but yet with docility. So that's a complete myth. It's absolutely not true that as a Roman Catholic, you only have to believe and accept a handful of, quote, dogmatic or ex cathedra things. It's just made up. It's a myth that one guy, one apologist, one Catholic person says, and then all the other ones just chirp it out and repeat it as if it's true because they heard it somewhere. And they always just chirp out and repeat like mina birds, the same phrases, the same copes, the same responses. And they never even think to consider, well, is that even true? Is it even the case that I only have to believe a handful of dogmatic things? Again, we've highlighted and cited multiple times on Twitter. We've put it up countless times. In Denzinger, there's at least 4 places where it says you even have to accept the Pope's juridical decisions. If the Pope says so-and-so is excommunicated, you have to accept it. You don't get the liberty of saying, I think he's wrong there. I don't accept that. It doesn't matter what you want to accept. You don't get to be a Protestant Roman Catholic. And most of the people who think I only have to follow blah, 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 blah. By the way, there's never a consistent, coherent idea of what the handful of dogmatic things even are. They're missing the entire point that they're actually being a Protestant. They're just not being a Protestant with the Bible. They're now being a Protestant with, quote, papal teachings. I will go through and sift through thousands of pages of documents and pick out the ones that I've decided through my fallible mental individual intellect line up with the previous, quote, dogmatic teachings. And yet, no layperson is a member of the magisterium. No layperson has that authority. No layperson is ever granted the ability or the authority to, quote, judge the first see. Judging the first see does not mean that only that you have the canonical privileges to judge it and excommunicate. They have this other cope where they say, well, judging the first see means to excommunicate. No, whoever thought that laity had the ability to excommunicate the Pope or the bishops anyway? That's a completely absurd argument. Nobody has ever thought that. That'd be like, so as if it's addressing some impossible absurdity that nobody ever even considered. As if there was a whole bunch of people thinking that the laity could excommunicate the Pope, so they needed to have this statement in canon law that no laity could judge and excommunicate the Pope. It's just completely silly, completely stupid. Obviously, the point is that no one in the church, bishop, council, laity, even the Roman College, none of them have the authority or the ability to judge and supersede the Roman See. Clear as day. That's the clear and obvious meaning. And by the way, all these people believe in foundationalism and self-evident truths. Is this not self-evident in your ridiculous position? In your pseudo-Talmudic religion? Is this not obvious? Of course it's obvious. And everybody knows that that's the exact argument they make to every Protestant. Every Roman Catholic, when they make these arguments to the Protestants, they're suddenly ultramontanist super papists. And then when they're in their inter-Nicene conflicts, oh, now you see we're papal Protestants picking and choosing where Francis is faithful and where he's failed. But they're not even honest with the people that they think and pretend are their trad popes. Benedict XVI has numerous statements throughout his many books which are absolutely condemned via Pius X, the Pacendi Dominici Gregis encyclical's list of what counts as modernism. That would condemn multitudes of the statements in Pope Benedict XVI's books as modernist. The book Addendum to Vatican I Lamentabili, which has a list of condemned modernist propositions, also would condemn countless places in the totally modernist books and writings of Benedict XVI. I'm talking about his books, his theological books before he became a pope. And all of these people, by the way, will cite the TRAD stuff like the Holy Office condemning books. Oh, wait a minute. Why would the Holy Office condemn books if private theologians and their private opinions don't make you a heretic? Of course they do. The very praxis of your Holy Office condemning the writings of this or that Jesuit, this or that person in the church, putting it on the list of forbidden books, disproves your dumb argument that you have to bind people to it to make it heresy. So at every stage, what these people do is modify and change their position to make the position unfalsifiable. Do you know what I mean by an unfalsifiable position? We talk about this, for example, Marxism is typically critiqued in philosophy as an unfalsifiable position. Why is this? Well, in Marxism, problems, as I'm sure everybody knows, they all come from class warfare. And so if you attempt to critique Marxism or refute it, all of your arguments are automatically canceled out because the only person who would critique or oppose Marxism is somebody who has false consciousness from the bourgeoisie. So your arguments are already canceled out. But wait a minute. So no one can launch a critique of Marxism? Correct, because anyone who does is automatically in false consciousness. So this is why it's typically called an unfalsifiable system, which is actually a system that's very weak. Because a very weak system doesn't need to set up these sort of ridiculous kind of fail-safes and tricks to make the system unfalsifiable. Yet nothing compares to Marxism in terms of unfalsifiability, except the papacy and the papal system. And ironically, this is even what Dollinger said. I have Dollinger's book here. And he said at the time of Vatican I, when he was very reluctant to accept the definition at Vatican I, he said that, well, hereafter, Roman Catholic apologetics will be basically nothing but people defending the arguments of Vatican I and the Roman See. It will end up being a bunch of papal lawyering. And lo and behold, what do 90% of the Roman Catholic apologists do? But write books and defend the papacy all day long. Because that's now the locus of the religion. The whole religion now is, in essence, the soap opera of what's happening in Rome. However, at the same time, you're also told, and this brings us to our third cope, you're also told that what happens in Rome, I don't care. I don't even have to be concerned. I have literally no concern with what's happening in Rome and what Francis is up to. All I care about is I have the Latin Mass. I have a conservative Novus Ordo Mass. I go to church. I take my family to sacraments. I don't have to concern myself with what's going on in Rome. Well, if we don't have to concern ourselves with what's going on in Rome and we can ignore Rome, you're beginning to make the point that Orthodox have made all along. So Rome isn't really that relevant to your Christian faith and expression at the local level, is it? And yet when you were converting out of Protestantism, and yet when you were arguing with your Protestant friends, you weren't singing that line. You were telling them that you need the papacy. You need the papacy to know what the dogmas are, to know the faith, to know the truth, to be guided morally to the tough landscape of the modern world. And the papacy will guard and preserve and protect our morals so that they're not changing and subject to flux. Except that you've already adopted a position of doctrinal development, which undermines a static, unchanging morality. And why was that? Well, because that became one of the most popular ways to defend the fact that the Vatican I definition of the papacy was not present in the first 1,000 years. And as we've highlighted probably 500 times, Roman Catholic apologists will vacillate back and forth between, correct, Vatican I's view of the papacy was always there from the earliest days. It was always taught. Oh, but it was also an evolving thing like a seed that grew into a tree. Okay, those are mutually exclusive positions, but Roman Catholic apologists have no problem trotting out whichever argument works the best in the case that they're in. So, is it true that you can follow a Platonic papacy in your head that is not connected to the one over in Rome? Absolutely not. 100% false. Again, a complete TradCat myth.